margin trading, which you do need to know about, but it's so dull. It's so dull, and I'm so sorry. All right. This screen should have been in presenting mode. We're going to talk about a principle first, something you'll hear a lot, and which is sadly so poorly defined by almost everyone that it becomes meaningless, but it's still, nevertheless, very true. You should go with the flow. You should trade with the trend. But you'll notice that I added this little the second part, which is however you define it, and that is the crucial bit right there. You need to have a way of defining the trend. You need to be able to say what is a trend and what isn't. And it's not a simple question to answer. It's not one that I'm going to tackle in this episode for now. Though, just accept deep in your soul that counter trend trading is an exotic sport, best left to professionals. The trend is your fair weather friend, I would say, is the most true statement that you can make about it. It will support you just long enough to stab you in the back when you least expect it. And that's just about how much you should trust it. When the relationship with the trend is new and fresh and confirmed, then bask in it. But when things start to mature and the thrill is gone, you need to get the fuck out of Dodge. We'll talk about that a lot more later. But go with the flow. Trading should be easy when it's done properly. You should be making profits without a lot of brain crunchingly difficult mathematics, or without taxing your self-control reservoir to the point where you're drained at the end of every day. You should not feel drained at the end of a day of trading. You should feel like you've been kind of chilling out the whole time. I saw an interesting thing about Arnold Schwarzenegger's principles of success. And one of them was you need to be relaxed while you're doing it, while you're doing these things. You should have a relaxed state of mind. It shouldn't be difficult, which is interesting because, lifting weights, tons of effort involved. And, it's very intense. Right? He's renowned for having these intense workouts. But while he's working out, he's not really forcing his brain to he's not in emotional distress. Working out is what he looks forward to. That's the thing that he attacks with vigor and delight. The way you guys love video games, so maybe video games are your thing. I just don't know. I don't know how the world is going to give you an outlet to take advantage of your passions. That's going to be tricky, and sometimes it isn't possible. But whenever it is possible, go with the flow. Go with the easy trend. And that's good advice for people stuck at home dealing with Corona and resenting it and hating it. You need to chill. You need to relax and try to find enjoyment where you can. All right. We're doing chapter 5. This is a continuation of chapter 5, where we're talking about margin trading a little more. So we've seen these slides. We're gonna skip through some of this stuff. I think we're on 5.3 now. I think we're just talking about the examples of margin calls happen. So 5.3, the margin call scenarios. The first scenario looks at a broker that does not use a separate stop out level and margin call level. So basically the margin call level is the stop out level. And they start off simply with an account balance, which is worth $1,000. And they imagine that you're going long on Euro USD. And the price is 115 when you open a mini lot, which is 10,000 units. That's what they start off with this example. The next example, they change the trade size and the amount of money in your account balance, making the examples a little more confusing. And I don't know why they would do that, but I'm not going to do that. I adapted their example so that they match, if you will. Now I just have to see. Okay. So they give you the margin requirement. It's 2%. Oh, I don't want to do that. Margin requirement is 2%. Therefore, the notional value of the position is about 10,000 euros because you open a mini lot, which is worth 10,000 units. And the euro is, of course, €1. So the notional value of the position is 10,000 euros. The account that you're trading is a US dollar account. So the notional value needs to be converted between the dollar and the euro. We know that the exchange rate is $1.15. So therefore, €1 is equal to $1.15 US dollars. Therefore, the notional value of 10,000 euros is equal to $11,500 US. The required margin formula is the notional value. I really wish I could highlight things without having this thing pop up. You hover over that and it goes away. There's more. Get auto advance. And I can open the speaker notes, but I can't get that thing to go away. Anyway, the required margin formula is required margin is equal to the notional value times the margin requirement. So if the notional value is 11,500 US dollars, we're multiplying it by 2%, which is the required margin. Which is the margin requirement. Then the required margin is $230. Simple math. There's only one trade open, so the used margin and the required margin are the same. So when you first open this position or shortly afterwards, supposing that the position reaches a break-even equilibrium, then your equity is going to be the same as your starting balance, which was $1,000. And so your free margin is going to be equal to your starting equity of $1,000 minus $230, which is your required margin. And that's going to give you your margin, your used margin of $770. The formula for margin level is equal to your equity divided by your used margin and then multiplied by 100%. So if we take our $1,000 equity starting value, divide it by the used margin, $230, and multiply that by 100, you get 435%. Very healthy margin level. But of course, as so often happens, a disastrous news event causes the euro to drop 500 pips. And so now it's no longer at 115, it's at 110. And you now have a $500 floating loss. Your equity has been halved. Now, used margin changes with the exchange rate. So the notional value is now $11,000. And since the value of the euro weakened, your required margin actually decreases. You now only need $220 to hold this position, whereas before you needed $230. Your equity is $1,000 minus $500. So $500 is what you have left in your equity. That's exactly half, 50%. Your free margin is now $280, which is the equity minus your required margin. And the margin level is now $500 divided by 220, which is the equity divided by the free margin times 100%, which gives you 227%. Not looking nearly as good. And this is where Baby Pip says the margin level is still above 100%, so all is well. I disagree. If you're in a position where this has happened, you should probably close your trade immediately because you did not expect this. And unless you have a really compelling reason to say, "Oh, it's going to recover. No worries. I'm fine. We're good. It still works," as the phone commercial says. Um, that's not all as well. That's wrong. That's false. That's just why I put a red X right there. The Europe? What the heck is that? The Europe. I hate typos. The euro drops another 288 pips. Probably that's very likely because if something could cause it to drop 500 pips, another 288 pip drop is very easy to comprehend. Something coming down, another measured move, you would have to have expected this. But as a beginning trader, you might not. And so the value of the euro of fiber is now 1.0712. The floating loss becomes $788 of your original $1,000 account. And so the equity is $212, which is now a 79% loss. And the required margin is decreased even further because the value of the currency has dropped. The notional value is decreased and it's at 214. But the problem is your free margin is now negative $2. Your margin level is now 99%, which is below the margin call level. So you will get a margin call at this point. You can no longer open any more trades. And because this broker, unfortunately, has a stop out level which is equal to the margin call level, your trade is automatically closed out. This is a very bad feeling. Feels bad, man. The used margin is going to get released. The floating loss will become a realized loss. The balance gets updated to match the new equity. And so your free margin, your equity, and your balance will all be the same. There's no margin level or floating profit loss because you have no open positions. And I don't have anything else to say about that except we're going to work hard to try to avoid this scenario. But you need to understand what's happening, and you need to, even if these calculations don't come naturally to you, which they don't for me, the broker handles all of that. The software calculates all these calculations automatically, and the number you really need to be looking at are your free margin and your margin level. They need to be safely above a certain multiple. I would say at least 200%. All right, looking at the second example. The only difference is that now we're dealing with a broker that has a margin call level of 100% and a stop out level, which is 50%. Brokers have different margin call policies. And so these levels will vary. These are just examples. And you should ask any broker that you sign up with, what's your margin call and stop out levels? What's your margin call and stop out policies? That's a very important thing to know that they never tell you up front, and they don't want to scare you away, because if the first thing they talk about is what happens when you get called out and lose your money, they don't want you thinking about losing your money, because you might flee. But as I've learned from hard experience, even if you know what your broker stop out level and policy is, that does not guarantee that they're going to honor or follow them. And I don't know that there's any rule that states that they must not stop out or margin call you at any level, which is a scary thought. Very scary thought. All right. So this example, Has a margin call level of 100%, stop out at 50. I adapted this so that, again, we're using $1,000 account balance in equity. And I hope I didn't make any mistakes in my conversion, but it's simple. Simple to keep the dimensions the same. So assuming that you go long cable, which is pound to the US dollar, I abbreviated here as GU, which you'll often see in forums. GBP to the USD at 1.3. And you open a mini lot again, 10,000 units. The margin requirement this time is 5%. And a pound is equal to $1.30 US. Therefore, 10,000 pounds is going to be equal to $13,000 US. And that's your notional value. Again, using the formula, required margin is equal to the notional value times the margin requirement. That means that your $13,000 notional value times the 5% required margin requirement, is equal to $650 required margin. And therefore, for your first trade, since you only have one trade open, your total used margin is $650. The free margin calculation is equal to the equity minus the used margin. So your equity and starting balance were $1,000 to begin with. So here's another typo. So $1,000 subtract $650 leaves you with $350. Basically, your starting equity subtracting your used margin gives you a free margin amount of $350. And then the margin level is equal to your equity divided by your used margin times 100%, which works out to 154%. Already pretty close. I would say 154% is not a super healthy margin level. And then, of course, following the cautionary tale nature of these lessons, there is another disaster, and cable falls 400 pips. 400 pips rapidly before you can do anything about it, and is now trading at 126. Your margin level falls to 95%. You feel nauseous. Your floating loss is $400. Your equity is now $600. Right, $1,000 minus 400, 600. Now the used margin changes with the exchange rate change because the notional value has changed. So we need to recalculate the required margin. Pound is now worth $1.26. So to control 10,000 pounds, or 10,000 pounds is worth $12,600. And so the required margin is now $630, according to the calculation that we've done before. The required margin is decreased along with the notional value decrease. Your free margin is equal to your equity minus your used margin. Your equity is only $600. Your used margin is still $630, or is $630 from $650. Even though it's less, it unfortunately is in the negative. So your margin level is less than 100%, 95%. So that's below 100%, and so you get a margin call. This is an insignificant warning, by the way. In most situations, the broker does not actually call you. You don't necessarily get an email even. You don't even get a message on the message system. They'll send you news about the stupidest stuff, but they don't actually message you when you get a margin call. Your terminal just turns pink. You get a pink bar in the terminal area at one point. Of course, they don't really want to warn you and have you recover. They want to take your money. The stop outs are about taking your money away. So you get a margin call warning, and then instead of closing all your positions immediately, cable falls another 290 pips. So it's now at 1.2310. The notional value changes again to $12,310. The required margin becomes 615. The floating loss is 690. Your equity is 310. Your free margin is 305.50, and your margin level is now right at 50%, which is the stop out level. So your trade gets automatically closed. Your used margin is released, your floating loss is released, and your free margin, equity, and balance become the same. It all evens out. The tension is gone, but you have sustained a 69% capital loss, which is an awful feeling. And you probably should have been prepared for that when your margin level was at 154%, but you'll come to terms with that later. What's important to realize is that between the margin call and between the time when cable dropped even further and then your margin level hit the stop out level, there was a chance for you to make a choice. Now your required margin is too low. Your margin level is too low to open any new positions. Before you hit that 100% marker, you can usually open some more positions up and say, I'm going to probably do the opposite of what's happening right now. If cable is dropping like a stone, you want to be selling it, not buying it. And that might help. But if your broker has a margin call level is the same as the stop out level, you do not get that chance. And so the onus is always on you to notice and to be able to react in time. And then Baby Pips goes on to give you a third example of a trade that's held with only $100. I didn't include it in my notes because it's the same deal. And the main point of that lesson is just, even though it's possible to control a fairly large amount of currency using only $100, or it used to be before the margin requirement or before the leverage requirements changed almost everywhere, it's still a terrible idea. You should never try to trade with such a small amount of money. $100 is too little. It's a matter of personal opinion and debate how much you need. But personally, I don't think I would try with anything less than $3,000 US. I just wouldn't. I mean, I'll talk about something that I call the critical path and the coherency of a path stream. Even on the smallest time frames, you do not want to trade with less than that. Because of variance, uncontrollable variance, and statistical fluctuations for which there is no method of forecasting. And you need to have an account that can weather those fairly regular fluctuations. All right. That is the educational part